Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about digital security or information security. You might heard in the news that recently there has been cases relating to security. For example, the recent one is about 500 million Starwood gas records were stolen in a massive data breach. Can you imagine 500 million data was stolen? And the data includes the personal record of the person visiting the hotels, also email addresses, even credit cards. So this is actually scary considering the size of the number of records stolen. Another case before that, 1.5 million records of Singaporean citizens were stolen. This is actually Singaporeans' health data. People were worried that the data were altered and so on, but the data was just stolen. But again, this is recent cases that we have to face, and we're going to see more cases relating to security. So when we talk about security, what is security? In theory, security actually consists of three things: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. If we shorten these things, we consider it, we call it CIA, taken from the first character of the elements: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. What is confidentiality? Well, confidentiality is the easiest thing to understand in terms of security. It is the secrecy of your data, your personal information, and things like that. People will worry that their data is taken by unauthorized user. So confidentiality is the thing that is most people think when we talk about security. The attack of confidentiality is easy. For example, you can talk to somebody and ask for their password, for example, and you wouldn't believe that people will tell you their password. Another thing what we call social engineering, where when people talk to other people to get their PIN numbers and credit card numbers, sometimes through telephones and sometimes even by talking. There are also cases when people looking from the shoulders of people taking money from the ATM. They're looking at their ATM PIN numbers and things like that. And we can go into even technical terms when people hacking into computer system, running certain kind of programs. They call it sniffer, which actually getting the data. We call it sniffing, taking the data of the network. And when using this sniffer or this sniffing program, we can capture the data. For example, somebody was using their computer to access their internet banking, and by using the sniffing, we can get their transaction, their account number probably, and their PIN number. Or sometimes people just want to get their credential, the email addresses and the name, so they can create fake user IDs. So there are ways to actually get data and to breach confidentiality. How to protect this? To protect confidentiality usually involves many levels. We can go to the technical terms. Usually people employ cryptography. By means you encrypt the data and you send it the data encrypted using some kind of algorithm, some kind of password, sometimes or key. And then at the other end, the receiver will get this encrypted data and decrypt the content and get their plain text again. You can also create a policy and procedure to prevent data leaking. So confidentiality is the first thing when we talk about security. The second term is integrity. Integrity means that your data should not be tampered, modified, or altered. It is possible when you send a data, for example, your transaction, and somewhere in the middle of the network or the system, your data is captured and then modified, and the data again transmitted to the server or the destinations. This attack is usually called man-in-the-middle attack. So your data has been changed somewhere in the middle. So that is actually an example of integrity. Integrity usually it is difficult, but it is happening. And when people talk about security, they usually don't talk about integrity. How to protect this integrity? The protections is a bit difficult because you have to create what we call a message authentication code. Meaning when you send something, you send a data, you send some kind of transmission data, your transaction, for example, then the data has to be calculated, and then this calculation is attached with the data. So if somebody modified your data, then the calculation will not match with the previous calculation, and you know that somebody is actually tampering with your data. So that's what we call integrity, the attack, and the solution. Another solution would be to actually log or you create notes of the transaction. So when there is an attack, you know. It's already too late, but at least you know that there is an attack. The third aspect of security is availability, meaning that your system or your data must be available when you need it. A long time ago, people don't think availability is part of security because the attacker actually does not steal data from you. The attacker does not modify the data, transmitted data, and so on. But the attacker actually creates problems, so your system is not available when you need it. A long time ago, there's no money involved in the system, so people don't really care if the system is down or not. But if you have a transaction system, for example, Amazon or eBay, if the system is down for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, then everything is chaos. The same thing with your banking system, for example. Imagine if your ATM machines from your bank is not available for a month. I'm pretty sure you'll change your bank. So availability is very important in security because it creates problem, and there is actually a financial problem into this attack. Now, the attack of availability is by making the system busy. For example, you requesting a data over and over and over again, or you accessing the web over and over again. If you do it manually, then it's time consuming. But sometimes you can create a program, a robot, and this robot will access your web over and over and over and again, so that your system is very, very, very busy, so that the legitimate user cannot access the system because the system is busy handling these robots' access or attempts. So it is very difficult to handle availability. The way to handle availability is through redundancy. So you might want to have 2 different web servers, 2 different networks, and 2 different data centers and things like that. But it is expensive. So some people still consider availability is not part of the security, but it is part of the security. So if I want to recap again, security is 3 things. It's confidentiality, integrity, and availability.